Good evening. Well, a breathtakingly original piece of work that Rob's here. Breathtakingly original piece of work that I've seen 3 times now, and I'm still completely in awe of it every time. Rob Hardy. Can I interest you in a glass of...
Yeah, actually you can. Thank you.
Wine?
I need that after that. I think, thanks Hugh. Hugh Whittaker from Panavision, thank you.
Cheers, Panavision. There's an enormous element, I believe, of stars aligning to make projects come to life. And obviously that happened with you and Alex with Ex Machina. So was there a sense, do you think, of moving into this project, and we'll get onto your relationship with Alex, but of trying to keep the family together? So was there
Definitely.
So how did that come about, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and again, it's driven by Alex, because for him it means a lot. If you get together a team of people and it's working, then why not do it again?
Absolutely.
So that was our big... It was one of our big things moving forward. Is when this project came about, it was almost like an unsaid rule that pretty much everyone who'd worked on Ex Machina, as many people as we possibly could get back again, we would, and obviously including the core members like Andrew Whitehurst, brilliant Andrew Whitehurst, VFX supervisor, and Jeff Barrow and Ben
Salisbury, yeah, amazing music,
and Marco and Mish, designers.
Yeah.
So it was important that we were all back in the room together, because it also meant that we had a foundation already with Ex Machina, so that we had something to play off, and we also wanted to better ourselves, really.
Right.
That was the challenge, at least.
So you've talked about your relationship with Alex before, but how did that? And obviously this is your second project, but how did that come about? And how did it begin, and how's it developed until Annihilation and on?
Well, I mean, it began obviously when I got the script of Cheers. It began when I got the script for Ex Machina, and I'd not really met Alex prior to that. I'd had a couple of meetings at the DNA office for other projects, one of which he'd written, Never Let Me Go. So, and of course I'd read, so I knew who he was, I read The Beach and all of that. And, but I was in New York at the time doing a film there, and we sort of did a FaceTime interview, and it went really well. I mean, as far as I was concerned with Ex Machina, it was just like, I just have to do this. Yeah. It was one of those scripts, and consequently since then, Annihilation and the next thing written by Alex, always those scripts are they're just so easy to read. There's no fat on them. It's exactly as it should be. So I was excited about that, because that's actually quite a rare thing, funnily enough, in this business, to get a script as tight as that. And we interviewed, and then I think it was like a few weeks later, I heard that someone else had got the job for various reasons pertaining to it being Alex's first film, and I didn't have as much on my resume, as it were, to back up what the producers felt was that they needed someone a bit more experience, basically.
Okay.
So that person was picked, and then, to cut a long story short, for various reasons that didn't work out.
Okay.
And I got a call after it had all been put to bed. I got a call from the producers to say, could you come to the DNA office to talk to Alex? I was like, well, yeah, I'll do that. So I went. I arrived, and Alan and Andrew was there, Alex, and we sat in the room together, and Alex just basically said, right, this is how it is. It's not worked out, and moving forward, here are the designs. This is what I think Ava should look like. What do you think? When can you start? I was like, today?
Yeah, I've started.
I mean, it's 5:30, but I could probably make some calls.
Yes.
And from then onwards, we just basically hit it off, essentially because there's no bullshit, really. And I don't say that sort of I don't say it lightly. I mean, it's straight talking when it comes to filmmaking in this way, and and it's quite refreshing. So you know, I'm always very let's just get to the point, and let's move through all of the bullshit so that we can actually start making something good, you know. And in this business, there's a fair amount of that that you wade through.
It's another story.
Anyway, it's another story. So we just hit it off basically, and we have the same aesthetic, and as the same with Marco and Mish and Andrew and everyone. And when I met the rest of the team for that film, it became quickly apparent that we were all on the same page, because Alex is very inclusive, you know. And it was the same. It was the same with this. Like one of the very first meetings we had was about the bear sequence, or the bear scene, the second bear attack. And the scene was written in a way in which it sort of travels through the house, and it was a very complex fight that was quite extended. Lots of different beats in it. And Alex called a sort of round table meeting, which is very, very common with our pre-production process. And he basically, everyone was in the room, you know, like stunt coordinator, VFX, everybody, you know, the art department, caterers, everyone. And he was just like, look, drivers were there. He was like, look, you know, this is obviously the scene, but how can we make it better? You know, is there anything anybody can contribute? So we all started to sort of discuss that, and out of that conversation came the distillation of that scene into something a lot simpler. In other words, tied to chairs, and something that we understood would contain it, because ultimately it's a very practical thing. We knew we only had 6 days to shoot it, that scene, and we knew that if we were going to ask about going all over the house and doing all this stunt stuff, it would strain the process. But actually, what we wanted was to distill it and really get to the bones of it being what it should be, which was hopefully quite scary.
I often try and have conversations with directors where you try and talk about the essence of a scene. What's it about, and could we do it in 2 shots, or could you know, can you strip it down, because actually you know that somebody will get into doing a series of sizes and overs and wides and mids, and then if you want to do that and then walk around the house, then you're right, that's going to expand out, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's good you say that, because we always start from a point where, well, I certainly do, where like, how can we cover this in as little shots as possible? And pretty much in every scene that we did, I would come up with some sort of master after seeing the blocking, and so the camera's constantly moving, whether we dance floor everything, or put it tracks, or steady cam, or whatever it is. But there's always this sense of the shot develops, and it's telling a story as it's developing. So I mastered that whole scene, and I think the camera essentially did a sort of 360, starting wide and ending up in this big close-up and pulling back, and up until the point that the bear goes and attacks Gina in the hallway. So it took in all of that, the moments where it sort of comes in and walks around them. And Alex was just like, well, that's crazy. We just that is insane. That's just crazy, because we have to cut. We just have to cut. But from that moment, we could then imagine. We got a shape of it. Everybody knew the atmosphere of that scene. So then you go in and you can really pick your moments of like, this is happening and this is happening. She's reacting to that. I mean, I love it when Lena, Natalie says, you know, don't react, and you immediately cut to Tessa reacting, you know, or trying not to react, and everything plays off of those actors, and that's really what we were trying to achieve, was really get to the, you know, obviously the effects are amazing, and you're just waiting for it to kick off, you know.
We'll talk about that in a bit, but just for that, Alex is obviously has got, even though he's new to directing, he's got obviously a fair amount of experience of filmmaking and screenwriting. Yeah. And I'm surprised actually when you say about writers moving to. I often find writers' scripts quite prosy and actually quite descriptive. So it's interesting you say that it's not, they're quite trimmed down, which is interesting. That's his transition into directing.
It's true. It's actually true. Like, I've worked with a few writers who've become directors, and I'm sure many people in this room have. And you're right. It gets quite prosy, and you're just sort of you're always searching for that centre point, you know, of each scene, and sometimes you have to wade through quite a lot of shit to get to it. Excuse
That's
my
delicately put. Yes.
Delicately put, but at other times it's just very clear on the page, and those are the best scripts, because then you've got to the point, you've got to the starting point, really, because that's the bounce point. That's where you need. That's where the process starts. That's where it becomes creative, and you need, you know, rather than waste time trying to get to that point, you hope that it's there on the page, and it always is with Garland.
So that's part. I guess part of his transition from writer to director. He seemed coming towards you, and I know that you've said that he actually ends up leaving a lot of those, obviously camera and lensing and framing and even coverage to a point. He kind of leaves, or in collaboration, but comes to you for that. Is that how that works?
Yeah. I mean, he defers. He'll tell you the same thing. Really, he just essentially defers to me, pretty much. But that isn't. It is not a case of, you know, how do you want to shoot it? It's in. Well, he does say that, but it's more a case of we already know how this movie looks. We already know how we're telling the story at that point. So in that case, it's really an understanding from his point of view, from a director's point of view, is understanding the process. And he'll say the same to the designers, same to costume designers, same to Andrew. You know, everyone. He'll say, how are we going to contribute to this? How are we going to tell this story? And I trust you. And that's sometimes, most of the time, it's a very good thing, and sometimes it's not so good.
Yeah, but as long as that environment means that you can go backwards and forwards, you know, sometimes there'll be a point where you go, well, how can we shoot this?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a collaborate. That's the problem.
Yeah, so you never feel adrift. It's never like that. It's more, and then of course, you know, there'll be very specific beats that we have to hit.
Yes.
For story purposes, editorial purposes, that he will obsess over. So we do those things as well, or we never miss those things. But yeah, I mean, there's a very. It's weirdly actually, it's weirdly when we're actually shooting, it does feel weirdly freeform. It feels a bit like we're kind of making it up as we go along.
Right. That sounds awesome.
It does have that feeling, but in a kind of a fun way, you know, not in a sort of chaotic, fuck, what are we doing way. It's more of a sort of, let's try that.
Right.
Let's try that. That's cool. You know.
Well, often, I mean, you can prep things to the nth degree, but things being alive on set, and being able to react to performance, and if you don't do that, then you're missing a whole element of stuff.
Yeah.
Blocking. So, do you get involved in blocking? So, to combine that sort of question with, I know that idea of maybe lighting sets in 360 or lighting sets relatively specifically, knowing how you want to do it, then cast come in. Is that right? And then so you, I mean, obviously you tweak that after the block, but do you try and inform the block as much as possible so they don't stand in a key light?
A little bit. I suppose what I always try and do is my starting point is essentially this is the space. So whether it's a tiny room or a big, like the mess hall, you know, it's a huge space, and we'll scout it a few times, and before, you know, obviously we shoot, and during that period, I'm sort of forming an idea of essentially where does the light come from. This is just really simple. It's just like, where does it come from, and what's his motivation, and once I figured that out, then I'll just essentially just sort of let that happen naturally. In other words, if they turn away from where that light is, they're going to be in shadow. They're going to be in silhouette. And essentially, that's how it is, because that's the reality of the situation. I know it sounds really basic, but it's a quite a liberating way to work.
Sure.
So the mess hall, for example.
I mean, it's mainly silhouette, right?
Yeah, and that was, and it was one of those things where, you know, we're in the shimmer. There's everything's overgrown, and that room itself is a remarkable location. But the walls are all glass, and they dressed in all of this foliage, pushed it in, and they're actually on the right-hand side. There used to be a big greenhouse area there anyway, so the trees had overgrown. It was an old abandoned school. So it was half overgrown already, and then they dressed more elements in. So essentially what it did is it cornered us into just one area of natural light, which I augmented, of course. And that was it. And I didn't want to put anything in the room. What I wanted to do was just allow them to explore the room, because it was there were 3 stages to that exploration of that room. They discover the board, they go to the beds, and then the video camera. And I kind of drew a line in my mind in the middle, and it was like, this is the light, and everything graduates to the back. It gets dark, and the board that we decided to place, where she discovers this, you know, she's trying to hide this thing that she's discovered. It felt appropriate to put it there. So
it was the deepest, darkest bit of the room.
Yeah, so her reactions are quite hidden. And that made the most sense. And then, of course, when they moved to the other side of the room and they discovered the video camera with the footage in it, you wanted to really, it was like you just exposed them to this thing.
Yes, it's illuminating. They're finding stuff out.
So they moved to that. So that was essentially the basis of that, really. And like I say, it's just about giving the actors that freedom, and it always enables us to move fast and explore and do all sorts of crazy shit.
Yeah, as long as you don't set up a light thing and unless you go and stand in the darkest bit of the room. Which you worked with.
Which we worked with, and not a lot of people would as in not a lot of directors would probably be happy with that, because it's like, hang on a sec, that's Natalie Portman, we can't see her face. She's reacting to something, it's quite a big moment, but you can't. And she was cool with it too, so, and it made sense, you know.
I think that liberty and that boldness has to come. I mean, it can only come from the director, because if he doesn't like it, I mean, we're there to serve the director, right?
Yeah.
So that can come. And if you clearly got that collaborative relationship with Alex already, so
yeah,
I guess if he felt it was too dark, he'd get, you know,
he would have said something.
He would have said something.
Yeah, he didn't, or maybe he did. I just wasn't listening.
So I know you used 2 cameras for 2 fairly distinct feels inside and outside the shimmer.
Yes.
What did you use and why to number 1?
So yeah, we used a Sony camera, Sony F65, which I'd used when we shot Ex Machina, because it has a very natural feel to it, a very natural look. There's a new one now, which is really interesting.
Which one's the Venice?
The Venice, yeah. But this camera I was familiar with. I've been using it for a couple of years at that point. So what we wanted to do was to sort of start... Actually, what we really wanted to do was to have the beginning of the film feel quite almost mundane in a way. Very, very clean, very... I don't say normal, so I don't know what normal is, but... Just sort of mundane, basically.
Yes.
Not distracting in any way. So I selected this camera, and I put some primos on the front of it, beautiful Panavision lenses, very very clean, but just render beautifully. So the idea was basically to track Lena's story for me, and when I was reading the script. As she enters the shimmer and things start to sort of break down, I thought, and by the time it gets to the end, I realised that basically at the end, I was going to start the movie with a different package that I would end the movie with, and I don't know why.
Right.
or how I was going to achieve that. But essentially, that was the idea. So as soon as we got into the shimmer, the idea was then, we tested many cameras, was to switch to something that was that had a bit more punch to it. And we ended up using the red. At the time, we were testing a red 8K, but there weren't enough.
Right.
Or so we were told, Hugh. There weren't enough of them. So we ended up using the 6K weapon, and I sort of switched out the lenses to use these G series, and they picked up all the sort of weird aberrations at the side. But actually, the idea was not to do that. The idea was to use these Panatars, and they're big, beautiful lenses. And mainly, they look great because they're just big and chunky and silver, and they just look good in photographs. It looks like you're properly making a film. It's a big, chunky lens, right? And they used it on Star Wars, and it's all that. So you're like, yes. Not that that's important, because I've never seen Star Wars. But I remember we were doing the costume test, and we were at the back of Pinewood. We went into the forest there, and we had all the cast, and I'd set up this tracking shot and some lights and trees and all of that, and some smoke, and it was all nice and atmospheric. And I set up this tracking shot, and Jenny, we had 2 cameras up, 2 reds, and Jenny put a G series on one of them, just because she didn't have it, because she wanted to cover the sensor, because she's very thorough like that. She's like, just put that on. Can't leave a camera like this, like to whoever it was that she was telling off. And then we had this Panatar, and it was all set up. It was like, God, this is good. But there was something missing. I don't know what it was, but there was just something missing. We had these two monitors in a tent, and we looked at it. And I said to Alex, come here, look at this. So which image do you like? Which one do you like? He's like, well, I like that one. It's like, I know, right? He's like, yeah, well, it's that. And then we pulled a couple of other people in. That one, yeah, that one.
Drivers again.
Drivers.
Got the drivers in.
That one.
They're very reliable.
Yeah, you trust the driver. And it turns out it was not the Panatars. It was the G series,
Right.
and it was the movie. Suddenly, it was like, this is the look. This is the shimmer look.
And you did that on set.
We did it. Well,
Not testing.
We did it about 5 days before shooting. Yeah.
Okay.
Having tested extensively
Right.
up until that point, we still stuck with the plan of things changing and shifting, but it just shifted in a different way than we'd planned. But it was just one of those moments where, okay, that feels right. Does that answer the question?
It does, absolutely. So you said what lenses you used. Did you?
Oh yeah, sorry. And then at the end, when she comes back from the shimmer, the idea was then to switch back, but have like a sense of something, residue. So we ended up going back to the F65, but keeping the lenses that we'd used for the shimmer. It was just like that. Nobody really notices this stuff anyway. It's just
You have to tell us. And then we'll watch it go, oh yeah.
Yeah, it makes you feel like you're doing something.
So there's a lot of. I mean, it's. Was there many builds, and do you? Obviously, with the builds, then you're lighting those from the outside in. But are you? And do you rely on the sensitivity of? This is a big question. Were there builds, and are you relying on kind of practicals and their sensitivity? Because there's bedside lamps and there's a little bit of dawn and there's. Is that what you do? Do you like doing that? And is that a digital thing?
You mean as in when you mean the sort of lighting plan as in like? Yeah, I mean generally the lights that are on set for me, for the most part, practical, and everything else is will be coming into the set through windows or whatever. But we always try and, I always, like with sets, it's like, let's just put a ceiling on it. Let's make it a real place. Let's make it as it would be. And, often at the very beginning, when you're going in, a designer or not a designer, but maybe, an art director or somebody will say, this wall, you can move this wall. It goes back. We'll take the wall out. And you're like, it's fine, it's okay. If we want to push the camera back and we can't make it that far back, that's the limitation of the environment, and it adds to the authenticity, I think. Whenever you take a wall out, it just takes ages, and you don't like the shot because it's just like, well, why are we over here when we should be over there? So in terms of the light, like for example, when they go into the shimmer, we had a very practical issue there because it was like, what do they take? Because there's obviously no power there. And so for the night scenes, they light them themselves, and they're going to light them with something which is something they can carry, which is also battery operated, and it's as simple as that. But also, once the lights are placed in a room, as in the case of the bear attack scene, they've placed them. We haven't placed them. You know, it's not a film thing. So those things we had to really pay attention to, and we tested a lot of different things, and we ended up with these tiny torch lights that could go on stands that would be light enough to carry in a backpack. And initially they were made as, they're manufactured as LED, and I'm not a fan of that, so I switched it to tungsten, and it just made them really, really hot, so, which obviously you can't tell in the movie, but practically the military would never use them because they would just burn their hands all the time. It's just not right. But they look good.
Yes, it's the main thing.
Yeah.
So I know you've got a love of tungsten.
Yeah.
And you prefer tungsten to almost anything else. And that's about a degree of control, right? Is that about a...
I suppose it's more to do with, you know, over the years you just develop an affinity with certain tools. And sometimes, as in the case with cameras and lenses, what's particularly interesting right now is that everything is shifting and changing, and there's always something to explore and something new to try. It's the same with light as well, but I think there's more of a sort of there's more of a rigidity within that realm, and for me, I've really felt like I'm digging deep with one particular kind of light, and I feel like I've got to know it a bit more. And it's not a case of, you know, playing it safe with something I know. It's more, I feel like I can really use that in a way it's malleable to me.
And you're not finding that with LED?
I suppose I just haven't used it enough to know or to really say that I can. I'm not going to sort of say I think it's shit, because I don't. I think it has a certain texture to it that doesn't feel right to me, or at least I haven't found a good application for it yet. And that's not to say I haven't used it. You know, there's always a gaffer who's like,
"You want some sky panels on that?"
Yeah. Got some in my truck. I bought it. Yeah. It's mine.
Yeah. It's got the new firmware. So speaking of which. Jumping to it's not sequential, but the moon at the outpost.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the moon at the outpost?
I think shooting night exteriors is like the holy grail. It's like you can never. It's just the hardest thing to do.
It is.
It's so hard because it's like when you stand outside at night. If you're in the middle of nowhere, and there's no sort of sense of a city or whatever. Your eyes adjust, everything becomes monochromatic, and you know it's like two-dimensional in a way. How do you achieve that? And for me, it's just always trying to replicate that, always failing. But so it's like it's got to be this thing which is sourceless. It's a sourceless thing.
But it's not, because you get shadows at night.
Yeah.
Don't you get moon shadow?
You do, and I never believe it, even when it happens naturally. I'm like, I don't believe that. Even though it's the moon. I'm like, that's fake. But, so it's always that. So with that, in that case, actually, it's interesting you say that. We did end up using LED.
Right. Why is that?
The reason was...
I can't believe that.
It was very practical because the design that I'd had for, or rather the amount of light I needed to put in the sky that would be tungsten ended up being too heavy for whatever crane that we had to lift it at the time. in the size that we wanted it, and to diffuse it the amount of times we needed to diffuse it to make it sourceless. So Andy Lowe, brilliant gaffist, came up with this, the idea of using LED sky panels. I've got some in the truck.
He said.
Quite a few of them, actually. So we put them up in the air, and we just brought it down and down and down and down and down, and so it was like really dark, and I was like, that's great. That's actually really great, because we also talked about moonlight through the shimmer, because there's the whole sunlight through the shimmer refracting and the colours and all of that. So there was this idea that we had to kind of, it wasn't just going to be moonlight. There had to be something in there. What saved it for me was also that little tiny practical element that contrasted against the environment around it in that little strange concrete hut that they have, that chin wagon.
Do you tend to, was it a lot brighter than that on set, and do you tend to grade that down so you could keep it up for a stop?
It was actually, it was as dark as that. And
you must have been down to like almost zero on that.
Yeah, it was messy. It was because Jay Patel, DIT, was like, he kept coming to me, he's like, Rob. And I was just like, Jay. And it was, that's how we talk. And it was just, and so I did look at it and I was like, okay, we should probably bring that up. And so we did. It was on the edge. It was a bit bubbly. But we managed to find the right balance, and then knowing that in the grade that we could just smooth things out a little.
Sure. So were you trying to keep up to a stop for your lenses as well, for the performance of the lenses?
Yes.
So you have to keep it up to.
You have to keep it up. But I was shooting quite wide open with those lenses, so
right.
Yeah, and they managed quite well, and that was the interesting thing about those G series, is because they sort of fall apart at the edges in the right way. If you term it in a different, not fall apart, but they look good at the edges.
Yes, or they look good for what
for what we wanted.
Yeah, sure. One or two cameras?
For the vast majority, it's one camera, except in the obvious places where we had. I mean, the bear sequence actually was one camera. I was trying to think where we used two cameras. Alligator, that was purely for time purposes, because we needed a camera on a crane, we needed a steady cam, and then we needed a ground camera. We didn't have three cameras shooting at the same time, but we could leapfrog.
Sure.
But that was always, that was definitely, I remember we had a lot of, that sequence and the bear sequence we storyboarded, which was rare because we didn't really storyboard anything else. It was rare for us to do that. We had quite a lot of storyboarding meetings about that. And it was all driven by this sense of time.
Sure.
Because Alex is like obsessed with never going over. He was never like, we're just not going over. We're not going past 6. I think he'd spent enough time with other directors as a writer, seeing them just go for it. I remember actually on the second day, there's a scene where they've entered, not long after they'd entered the shimmer, and they're walking. It's just it's like a really nice walking, big wide shot of them walking. And we'd spent the whole day getting this big, huge rain rig in, and the crane actually was painted green. That was the manufacturer who'd painted it green, because it ended up being in our shot, which was lucky because they could just paint it out. But we were poised and ready to have this really stunning rain effect as they're walking through this forest. And we got to the point where they were still setting up, and I think it was like 10 to 6 or something like that. And we had lined up this 100-foot tracking shot, and they were all ready to go and everything. And Alex was like, let's go, it's 10 to 6. And I was like, just wait. It's going to be, they're going to press the button and, rain. And it was just like, no, we've got to. So we started shooting. We did some dry runs, and then it got to something like 3 minutes to 6. And the guy who was pushing the button was like, I need another 3 minutes. And it's like, why not 2? Yeah. But they didn't, and then Alex just called it at 6. He was like, done, we're done. And he was literally like, one more take, and it was like, no, that's it, we're going, it's finished.
I kind of like that.
Yeah, actually, actually really like that.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, I've been, there's a couple of times when I've been, you know, you've been planning a shot for months and months, and then you get to the point of doing it, you're running out of time, and the director calls it. It's like, just 15, let's just do it. We planned it. Why shouldn't we do it? But I respect that, because it, you know, if he's. Did he get enough of what he wanted? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, he did. I mean, you know, the
and how critical is that rain? You know, is it actually?
Well, I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, it was atmosphere. Is really what it was. Sure. It wasn't necessarily a story element. It was potentially showing the environment changing and shifting, and that was really the idea behind it. But it didn't change the narrative.
Yeah. Sure.
You know.
I was going to ask you about your so the daytime forest. You obviously used a fair amount of smoke, but you were using lamps on the almost at ground level for flares.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about that, because I know that you generated flare elements.
That's right. Yeah. Well, the lamps we used in situ. The whole idea, again, was to create this sort of refraction of and this constant sort of slight sunset feel. And it sort of gave us license, really, to put big lights in trees, and which is what we ended up doing. But it got to the point where, you know, we had to be slightly careful. There were a couple of times I think it gets a bit on the edge, but ultimately, we sort of played with the idea that it would be slightly disorientating, so that you could really, you know, and it was also a sense of creating distance. So if I was dropping a lamp in a quite low level in the trees, way back there, you're sort of saying that there's a limit to this forest, or there's an edge somewhere, and the sun is deep there, you know, deep in the background, and those things. It was always driven by this idea to sort of bring a bit of reality to this quite surreal environment, but having a bit of license also to play with it, you know. But we did, Andy had to drag 24 Ks and
they weren't LEDs. Then.
Windy lights into the into the forest. Yeah,
right.
It was quite comical, actually, seeing the guys try the cable stuff. You know.
Not there.
Not there.
Oh yeah.
Just there.
Yeah. So this shooting in the elements of flares, because I know that you shot a lot of flare tests.
Yeah.
And how did you use those?
Well, there was, and this, you know, it's really interesting. Again, it came from one of those round table conversations, because there was always this, like, what is the shimmer? How does it react? And my thing was always that if we imagine it's not necessarily a dome, but there is something that, because it's refracting everything, right? DNA, everything, and it also obviously refracts light, so there has to be colour in that. And Alex has these amazing reference photographs at the very, very beginning of these sort of colour, essentially, that's in the air. And we would swap images and about, you know, finding images that somehow played with that. And there were, what we decided was that Andrew Whitehurst was very much in this idea of, he didn't want the majority of the visual effects that told the story of the shimmer to feel VFX-y, it had to feel organic. So the idea came about that you know, we would start shooting those elements that we would later put into the movie, but we'd generate them ourselves rather than it would be generated digitally. So
it would appear in highlight. It looked like there was a kind of like diesel.
Yeah,
had been spilled everywhere. So on all the highlights and in the smoke and everything.
That's it. It's dirty, and there are and you just all sorts of things happening, and but everything bleeds into everything else, and that was the important thing. That whatever colours there were, it would bleed seamlessly. And it was shifting as well. So we went to Panavision and we shot a bunch of against black, just a whole load of what we called a shimmer library. And I got these sort of moving colour projectors that are constantly changing, shifting, just out of the range of the lens, and different kinds of glass. The Panasars, actually, the big, chunky, beautiful ones, responded really well to that. So what we would then do is shoot those flares, and then we would take a tiny element. We'd study those flares microscopically and take a little piece of it and see what was moving within that piece. Say that's the bit we need.
Wow, right, cool.
So it wasn't really just like, oh, there's a flare. It's more.
So having moving light flares.
Yeah, like
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and then when we're in the grade, then we would with Asa we would just sit there after the VFX had been done and just add these little pieces and bring up the shimmer library and all that. Bring it up. And we would look and find a small piece, yes, and put it over someone's face. Now we can see her.
Yeah. And you've worked, it's Asa Scholl at Molyneux, you've worked with him a lot or just on these?
Quite a lot, yeah. I mean, since Invisible Woman, really.
Right. And he was involved, so how do you work? You did some prep work with him, obviously, with the flare stuff. And
yes.
Did you do some LUTs across your two camera formats, and how did that play into post? And was the grade extensive?
The grade was quite extensive, most of which I wasn't there for because I was prepping mission, but it was so it was different and out. But we knew that would happen, so we always bring Asa in in pre-production, basically, for conversations about. We did it with Ex Machina as well. We brought him to the set to talk about colours of carpets.
Brilliant. Yeah. They don't get out very often.
No, they don't. He didn't like the colour.
Right.
He didn't like it. So that was the last time he did a set visit. But we did do. We basically what I would do is create this kind of chain between myself, Jay Patel, and Asa, and at the very, very beginning, so we could start. We talk about we're very open about our intentions, and it's like, let's try this, let's try that. These are our aims, and we explore. And then, so if Asa has an idea or Jay has an idea, whoever, it gets folded into that process. And so, obviously, it was an advantage to us that Asa knew that this is what we were doing, was generating the shimmer library, and we'd send it straight over to him, and he could start playing with it, before we'd even shot the movie, and then come back to us and say, well, this is working, this isn't working, this feels very natural, and this doesn't. And we would then start to focus on those other elements. And of course, Alex would be like, actually, this is insane. We should really focus on that. And then we would take that. And,
cool.
Yeah.
So that collaborative idea coming it sounds like it stems a bit from Alex. That comes down and it's which is brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
The fact germinates the collaboration for everybody, and it's an open field to.
Yeah, and I think
input is fantastic.
That's exactly it's exactly it. And the important thing was just to be very open, and not to worry about coming up with a shit idea. It's just like you just keep communicating.
Yes.
And I know it sounds obvious, but it actually
doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't happen very often.
We've talked before that, but just that idea of you get on set and the decisions kind of have to be made. Time and budget allowing.
Yeah.
You have to make the right decision often, and if you make the wrong decision, it's very difficult to go. Can we
try that again?
Try something else.
Yeah.
And that's because people are the first AD's going to look askance at you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I suppose when you've got a very, 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 very tight schedule, then you're never going to get that chance. But sometimes, if something doesn't feel right. Yeah, I mean, I remember after 2 weeks of the grade of Ex Machina, we presented it to everyone. We'd fine-tuned it by that point. We had another week left, but we presented it at the end of 2 weeks to the producers and a few other people, and everyone was like, fantastic, brilliant, fantastic.
Don't touch it.
Don't touch it. And Asa, myself and Alex were at the back of the room, and when the movie had finished, we just looked at each other, and we all, without really saying anything, we all felt the same. We were just like, we've got to start again. Just got to start again, this isn't right. And we got to this point where we really believed what we were doing was right, and then it was just this sort of collective, instinctive, oh, fuck. Sorry. We got to start again. And we did, and actually it was good because we didn't really start again. What we did was
you've got a base level of stuff to do.
Finished,
Yeah,
basically.
So just quickly, just can you describe how you lit the transformation of in the cell underneath the lighthouse?
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
that's obviously a very dark space.
Yeah.
But there's this mesmerising light that appears, and then the weird magic bumhole alien, alien thing.
Yeah, the magic bumhole. That was. That was.
Cheers.
But I don't. You can't finish before I finish.
Okay.
Well, actually, no. You finish before I finish because then it makes me look better. Yeah, the magic bumhole was very. It was actually a thing that because it was like it is an object. It is a thing, right? And it generates light. So we create that.
Right.
And it was odd because it was an enclosed space, and Alex was obsessed with this idea that you couldn't really, you sensed it, but you couldn't define it. You didn't really define the shape of the place or
Right.
the texture on the walls. So it was always this constant idea of the darker, darker, darker. But at the same time, you know, that really challenged me because it's like, where's the light coming? Where is it? What's generating? And of course, it's this thing. It's the thing. It's the magic bumhole. And so, what I did is I had them. Or rather requested that they build the exact replica of this thing, but in a very opaque fiberglass that
Right.
we would literally put a light inside or a couple of lights inside. It's that simple. And the 2 days before we were shooting, we went down to the set. After we'd finished one day, we went down there, and the art department built a solid one, which we couldn't put anything inside. And
solid as in not
it's
just
just
solid material, but sort of.
yeah, and I did actually, I did say, could you do that again? Could you
In a collaborative sense.
in a collaborative sense? Can we try to do that? And there was a lot of like we had no time, no budget, whatever. But anyway, they did do it, and it actually became a thing that was quite essential to what we were shooting,
Right.
because it generated everything that was happening onto Natalie.
Right,
and,
right.
And then we played with
inside that. Then did you?
we put stuff inside, and it was a combination of different kinds of tungsten bulbs that had been ripped out of various lamps and coloured in certain ways, but subtle shifts of colour that were then put on separate dimmers, and the whole thing then sort of pulsed in a kind of weird, pulsy way.
Cool. So that was all the stuff in her. I mean, I guess that was augmented as well, but there's stuff in her eyes, and then
Stuff in her eyes, that's right. It all came from that. It was all coming. And actually, the fiberglass created this really amazing, soft diffusion that I could never have created with regular film diffusion, light diffusion.
Yeah.
So it had its own kind of personality.
Did you do? Was there anything coming from above?
Well, yeah, there was. We cut a hole in the roof, and I had this very, very soft light coming from above, that we couldn't quite decide. There was this moment where we were just like, we sort of need it, but we don't want it. Where's it coming from? And it actually, in the end, we depending on where we were, like obviously Jennifer is,
Yes.
It was needed, but the sense that it was trying to create the sense that it was coming from her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's useful. One of your cast members providing.
She provides the light. She's lit from within.
She
is actually. Jennifer literally is lit.
Yeah, I mean, we can't not talk about how amazing the cast were.
Yeah.
An amazing set of people.
Yeah, really incredible cast. We were lucky to have them. They were amazing, and also such a great team together. They were really, whenever, in between takes, they would just all sort of go into this tent, and you just hear this kind of crazy cackling and laughter of them. It was just constantly just joking about, and it was brilliant, actually. They were really brilliant, and each with their own very distinct style.
Yeah, again, I think that's part of the they're as much as part of the team about making the film, aren't they? So if they feel comfortable enough to do that, then actually they're collaborative, and everyone is putting into the pot, aren't they? And I think that's really important, especially on ensembles.
Yeah, and it was there was no sort of trailer it was nothing like a trailer world there. It was very much, mainly because there was no budget for trailers. It was just keep them close to the set. I think that was Alex, just keep them close. And they would just put a tent up and they'd all go in there. And so I think through that, this camaraderie happened, you know. But they were brilliant. And, you know, like Gina Rodriguez, for example, she does all her own stunts. And she's just, you know, so all of that stuff was her, which again...
In the bear attack.
In the bear attack, which really enabled us to properly shoot that in a real way, as opposed to worry about face replacement. All of that stuff.
It's terrifying.
And then, of course, and then they've got Natalie, who's like the Rock. And every time I see it now, I'm always seeing something different in her performance. It's actually quite remarkable.
She is amazing.
It really is remarkable.
The bear head, was that ever a practical element?
Yeah. We had 3 versions of that. There was the man with the stilts in a blue suit. And there was the animatronic, incredible animatronic sort of top half of the bear that was wheeled into set and controlled. And it was actually really, the level of detail was incredible. And then there was the bear head, which was just a handheld sort of rubber head. So we had these 3 versions. We started with the man in the blue suit, and I liked that because we mastered with that because, again, it gave everyone that sense of there's something in the room.
Yes.
Alex hated it.
But there has to be a process to those things.
Yeah, to get to the point of it was just like get the man in the blue suit out of the room. But then we, then it sort of became it distilled down with the animatronics. Then again, how Andrew was just like, it just gives me something to play off. And then the bear head, which Alex held, which was the most comical of all of the
I'd love to see a wide shot of that. That would be great.
Yeah.
You did a very small amount of additional photography.
Yeah.
What was that for?
Well, interestingly, it was a political thing more than anything, but actually in the end, we think it may be, I don't know, it's up to you guys whether you think it works or not, but the additional photography that we did was 3 days of Natalie, Benedict Wong, and a little bit of Oscar in the hospital set. It was just a continuation of that dialogue between them, the question and answer, and some slight changes in dialogue. Was that
additional, or was it changes? Was it reshoots? Was it a bit of both?
It was sort of a bit of both, really. We'd not really. If anything, I'd say it was additional because we would get so far into the scene, and we get to a point where we were shifting into reshoots. In other words, the dialogue that was happening was the same, and Alex would just say, "Cut."
Right.
We've got that.
Yeah.
So it was additional, I suppose. But the reason for it being essentially the studio, certain people at the studio felt the movie, one particular person felt the film was too intellectual, and this is a quote, too intellectual and too complicated for audiences. So it was specifically the ending. It was either we reshoot the ending or we come up with another plan, and Alex's plan was to just instill something, just enhance a few of these little beats between those two, so that it could not really explain things, but it would.
It does. It's just a little bit of narrative.
It would help alleviate, clarity, exactly. So that's what we did.
Cool.
Yeah.
We've talked for ages. Has anybody got any questions? Wow. Yes. There's a question over there.
Hi, I'm here. Hello. Actually, I was on to say I'm very excited to be here seeing the screen because yesterday I was seeing this movie in Netflix, in my small laptop in Netflix, but I feel like more moving when I watch it in the similar. So I just like to say it firstly, and secondly, I have a question for you. Is I saw that the house in the Shimmer. Is quite similar to Leila's apartment, the house she lived in. And also, I noticed there's kind of similar lengths of shots and lighting as well. But how's your visions and how do you feel like any connections when you visualize the shots in Leila's house and the house in the Shima as well?
Well, I the idea was always to have those things quite similar. But again, that was one of those things that came up during our roundtable discussions, that partly because there were practical elements to completely changing the set, which weren't really affordable in terms of time for us. But actually, we really started to fall in love with the idea that essentially it's the same space, but it's obviously shifted and slightly redressed, but we would want to replicate some of those shots that you see in Lena's house, and then you eventually see in the house that they have the bear attack happens in. So it was important to us to create a link there, but that comes back to the whole idea of a slightly, the hallucinatory idea of the way in which the shimmer operates, the way in which it refracts everything, and it makes things just a bit, there's a sort of a kind of slight, well, there's a trippiness to it, I suppose, but we wanted to emphasize that breakdown of her relationship, and the movie itself is layered in that sense. So it is. It's actually. I'm just trying. The more I speak,
kind of it symbolises
the more I speak about that, the less I think.
Downhill.
Yeah, I'm saying it's not coming out quite right.
But it is. It's a mutation of her narrative, isn't
exactly.
it? So it's all collapsing, and the fact that it's playing with her mind as well as the fact that they get to the foot of the stairs and it's the same.
It's the same. There are similarities, but it's a fine line between that and sort of making it too obvious and trying to sort of be subtle about it. And I think we were on that edge. You immediately recognise it's the same house, but it was a fun thing to do for us, basically, from a narrative point of view.
Thank you.
Sorry.
This is the third time I've seen the film, and this is obviously the first time I've seen it in a proper cinema. So I wanted to ask what your perspective is on the fact that a lot of people won't get to view the film, obviously, in the cinema. And secondly, what do you think that the changing landscape in the way people are viewing content affects the work of cinematographers?
Good luck with that, Rob.
Yeah, I know, mate. Jesus Christ. What's really interesting, I actually think it's quite interesting. The outcome has been quite fascinating to watch and see the reaction of what's happened. So, essentially what you have is a movie that has a budget that requires, I suppose from an economical sense, from a studio point of view, it requires a certain pullback. It requires that it achieves much more than some of its parts. So movies of that size, and it's a mid-budget movie, it's not a huge budget movie, they've got to hit certain beats, right? From a production point of view. And this was never going to be that because of the nature of the story, the filmmakers around it. So from that perspective, it's great that the studio was supporting that. It's brilliant that they supported that. But it's not surprising that it ended up the way it did, and that they were then afraid and slightly worried about that. And actually there were some reasons for that, a number of reasons, but the movie Blade Runner hadn't performed as well at the cinemas as they'd hoped. And another movie had come out called Mother, which Paramount were heavily involved in pursuing and promoting, and again it didn't perform as well as they'd hoped. So for some reason they'd put Annihilation in with that group of movies and got gun shy, essentially. And the ultimatum was really, it's like change the movie to fit our idea, or this happens. What then happened was that Alex and Scott Rudin moved forward to a distributor called A24, who distributed Ex Machina. And a similar thing had happened with Ex Machina, that it was, Focus Pictures they saw the final cut and they weren't quite sure what to do with it, and they gave it to A24, who promoted it brilliantly. So A24 saw this film and they were like, yeah, this is going to be our biggest release of 2018, this is it. And that was shut down quite quickly for whatever political reasons, I imagine. So then it got to a situation where it's like, okay, so there will be a theatrical release in America, but in Europe it's going to go to Netflix. And in a sense, you're like, okay, in the one sense, that's actually really good, because Netflix is, in a sense, you're just going to, it reaches such a wide audience. So our movie will be seen probably by more people than would it have just done if it had been at the cinema. At the same time, you want it to be seen. It's a big screen experience, and I don't just say that in this. It's like every movie is a big screen.
It's different.
It is different, and it's not just to do with. It's everything. It's the whole experience.
Sound and the music.
Yeah, the sound, and that's what cinema should be, and it should be supported. But of course, for economical reasons, it's understandable if there's a concern that it might not make its money back. There has to be another way of doing that, and that's where Netflix stepped in. That they could fix the balance, I suppose. From a creative point of view, it's been a really interesting process for me, because we always made it to be seen like this. When it first went out on Netflix, there were some technical issues for a couple of weeks that were then corrected. So for the first 2 weeks of its release on Netflix, it didn't look like this. It looked completely different to this. And I don't say that from just purely from a cinematography point of view, but it was also from a narrative point of view. So you missed a lot of the detail that was telling the story in terms of its visual range and colour and everything. So that was disappointing. It was then corrected, so it's fine, but we learnt some lessons from that, let's say.
Hopefully Netflix did as well. It's important, isn't it, that it goes
exactly,
out?
And I think everyone learnt lessons from that. And
what were the issues?
Well, the issues were that from a technical point of view, you'd have to, in terms of like numbers and that stuff, you'd have to ask ASA about that. But essentially, what we delivered wasn't transcoded and then broadcast, or rather, it wasn't broadcast in the way that we delivered it. So, what you would see on the screen when it comes to things like those shimmer flares, the colours in the sky, all of those subtleties, the eyes, the reflections, all of that was lost. It just clipped, everything clipped and burnt out, and it became quite a contrasty image. So you lost a lot of the subtlety. But again, we've all learnt from that, and Netflix were great. Actually, they corrected it, rendered it properly, and hopefully it won't happen again.
It's a bummer to be the first people, isn't it?
It is a bummer, because especially with this, and it's a bummer to happen to anyone, to be honest with you, but
Something that's so subtle. I mean, they've put a lot of content out, a lot of HDR content, and I think it varies on, obviously what you watch it on, your broadband,
This is it.
There's all sorts of things.
This is it. There are so many variations. It's like now that it's weird actually with the DCP, rather than even from a film projection point of view, like Kubrick always went to a cinema to make sure the projection was okay. It's when you grade and you do a DCP and it's on the screen, you're actually you're in a safe place because that's the way the movie was intended to be. It's the best it's ever going to be. So when it goes out, irrespective of whether it's broadcasting the right way or not, there's always going to be a variation, and it's a scary thing. You can't control
account for all of that either as well, because otherwise you just end up with something that looks like telly.
Yes.
Because it needs to. Those sort of things are generally kind of have to be fixed up so they can be seen in almost any situation.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like and people have TV set for. I mean, I can tell you now, like my brother's TV is like. I was like, did you see
it? The motion blur thing on.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, no, I saw it. Yeah, I saw it. Did you like it?
Yeah.
It's all right.
Brilliant.
It's a bit weird.
Is there any more questions?
Thank you. I look forward to your next collaboration with Alex.
Absolutely. Another question.
Hi. Congratulations on the film. I was wondering, there's a lot of visual effects shots. Could you maybe tell a bit more about your day-to-day collaboration with the VFX team, and were they on set like every day, or how did that go?
Yeah, Andrew Whitehurst, who was running that show, who also did Ex Machina, was on set every day, as was always the case with Ex Machina as well, and so it's an ongoing collaboration, and it was always again, it comes back to what we were talking about earlier about everything trying to be as organic as possible. But of course, this is a blank canvas, so we didn't really have much of a reference point in terms of creating what the shimmer, what it would look like or what it would feel like. So it was an ongoing conversation. So whenever we tried something, we were experimenting with something on set, we would always defer to Andrew to say, is this going to help? Is this going to help or hinder us? Basically, but he's just such a big part of the process. He's always there. He's got this little amazing. He's got this book that he's constantly drawing and creating, creature designs and ideas for what the shimmer might do or be, or with the deer, for example, the two deer. His
what are the two deer?
The two deer, because one goes like that, isn't it? His designs for that, they just develop. He'd be on set drawing away, and then eventually a week later he'd be like, "This is what I think it should be," and we would just and it would just look at that, and so the relationship was a very close one. I always considered him just part of the camera crew anyway, and his relationship with Alex is really tight. So, yeah.
Or having on-set support with VFX, can you go directly to him and say, can we fix this because it would take too long to get out of shot? Or
yeah,
like you said about the machine.
Yeah, there are elements of that, but actually it was like, can we do this? Can we get rid of that? And there wasn't so much of that. There were elements of it, but it's more that the relationship that we have with Andrew is that it's, like I say, he's part of the team, so we do. We really, it's a collaborative conversation, and it's always very much. He's constant. He's just an ideas man, and he's an enabler as well. It doesn't almost feel like he has a traditional VFX supervisor role. It's like there should be another term, another label for what he does, what specifically Andrew does.
In fact, that's all integrated front to back.
Yeah.
It's great because we said it's often you have to sort of hand it over to VFX and they take over and do their bit, and then they seem to sort of own it a bit. But if the fact that he's been involved front to back,
completely fused into the process, and not very. No, I think I heard him say no once. or that's ridiculous. You know, I think is what he said.
And that was probably at lunch.
Yes. What's this?
And we can't not mention that you've just started, just before we finish, I guess he said, we can't not mention that you've just started post on possibly the biggest show on earth, which we could talk about all night. But what is next for you?
After that show?
After that show.
There's possibly, we're talking about another project together, Alex and I, which is a piece that he's written. It's actually an 8-part piece for FX, but I'm not sure I can really talk about it very much. But it's very exciting and it's very trippy and
excellent.
It's brilliant.
But more work with Alex.
More work with Alex,
Brilliant.
essentially.
Well, I don't think we could ask for anything more. Rob Hardy. Cheers.